So in general, mapping traffic from the outside to your Kubernetes cluster requires setting up DNS entries so that a particular domain points to your Kubernetes cluster. Today, HTTPS is mandatory, so you also need to create an Ssl certificate. So this is where the tutorial at this stage needs to be updated, because I think I haven't added the steps on how to create the Ssl certificate to the tutorial yet. Okay, so in the following we are a bit in the improvisation mode, because as I said, it's not in the tutorial yet. We are updating the tutorial then after the lecture within the following days, so that you can try it out yourself. By the way, I recommend you to use Minikube for your tests, because then you can also look up the Minikube documentation, where you need to modify this example anyway. But generating the Ssl certificate will be similar. So there are two steps that we need to create, that we need to do here. First of all, we need to create a secret, a Kubernetes secret. We'll cover the secrets in config maps and secrets later in greater detail. So for now, we think about the problem that comes with configuring Ssl termination. So with Ssl termination, you need a certificate, and the certificate needs to be located near to the web server that terminates the Ssl requests. So in our case, we terminate the Ssl certificate in the Ingress controller, which would be in Nginx. So we need to configure the Nginx with a particular Ssl certificate. So the Ssl termination ends at the Ingress controller. The reverse proxied traffic going to the service will then be unencrypted. So you have a certain path within your Kubernetes cluster where traffic is not encrypted. And this is a reason why there should be a high level of trust within users of a Kubernetes cluster, especially if you're using a flat network, which is the default in Kubernetes. All right, so we don't have to care about an A record, because our Kubernetes cluster here in our example already has a domain, and it already resolves to the right router. So we don't have to set A records or CNAME records here. If you are developing locally and you want to add a domain but you don't want to buy one, all you have to do is edit your resolve.conf. If you're using a Windows machine, well, you have to figure it out yourself. There's also like some hosts file where you can do that, but you have to look it up yourself. For Unix-based systems, usually this is rather easy. So I could, for example, say my funny domain does not exist, and I want this to resolve to 171.0.0.1. And I say ns lookup. Doesn't work. I think I have to update the DNS cache then. I'll just do that. Yeah, I think this doesn't work anymore. What the fuck? No, I don't know. I think that they changed the DNS subsystem. Last time I checked, this was like a few years ago. It did work. In Unix in Linux systems, this usually works. I think you have to use other utilities because this is a generated file. Also, there's a local DNS cache. You have to tell the operating system possibly to reread the cache. I tried to look it up, but it would take more time than that. So as a takeaway, there are ways on how you can add to your local resolve your own domain mappings, so that you don't have to set up public domains, especially for testing purpose. That would be fine. So this way you can also set up a local domain and let it point to your Minikube. But there will be tutorials on how to do that. Maybe I'll add a Minikube tutorial at some point to the Kubernetes tutorial where I cover that in greater detail. Let me check this. The chat. Well, I'm not sure. Oh, maybe this works. Maybe I just took the wrong file. Oh, I have to sudo this. Yeah, you're right, Philip. Good advice. Thank you very much. Yeah, now it works. Thank you, Philip. I was in the wrong file, so it's not the resolve file, it's the host file. The resolve file is for entering name servers, and this one is basically used by the resolver of your operating system to look up local definitions. So you can see that there are already a few defined here, and so you can add your own entries in this file. I think that will also work for Linux. All right, awesome. Good to have smart people here. All right, so DNS entries and Ssl certificates. So it's time to generate our own Ssl certificate. So we are now entering the research and experiment section of this lecture. I have to check, do I have OpenSSL? Yes. This is what you have to set up because we need OpenSSL to create a certificate. So this is the Ingress template from the tutorial. So there's the type Ingress. It is an Nginx Ingress. So the documentation for this would be here. This is the documentation of our Kubernetes, so you can see what's happening there. And from here you would get the information that we're using the Nginx Ingress controller, and this will give you more information about the Ingress controller. So it's not a secret, but you'll have to figure it out, which we'll do now. Okay, so for all ingresses, you'll have a kind ingress. But as you can see, this one needs an annotation, in this case that you'll tell Kubernetes which Ingress controller to use. In the specification of the Ingress, we bring together all the mapping information that we discussed earlier. So first of all, this is the host. So we have to check whether this is the right host. I'm pretty sure it's not because I'm using a different cluster. So kubectl config view. So here you have the URI. Alright, so this is the unique identifier of the cluster, and this is the prefix for reaching the Kubernetes API. We do not want the API here, but we want apps. So there's a special subdomain configured for the cluster, and I think we need to add we'll have to try it out. All right, we'll have to try it out. So setting this host right is basically the thing that where you really have to understand the particular ingress that you're using and the way the routing is done. So I'm not into the details of our product at this point, so I'm not really 100% sure how it works. And they recently changed that, so that's why I'm a bit confused here. All right, but in general, this is where the host is.